So, Vic, have you finally watched all 4 of those movies yet?
All 4 of what movies?
What are you talking about? The movies we're reviewing. Three
Wait,
Ninjas.
what? Sir, you bought the Three Ninjas collection on Blu-ray?
Yeah.
How
Wait,
dare you? Now, hold on, wait a minute. Tell me that's just the trilogy and not Part 4's Magic Mountain Adventure.
for one, it's High Noon at Mega Mountain. Okay.
Oh,
And
it's
yes, I do have all 4. And you're telling me you didn't watch it. I thought we agreed that Three Ninjas was going to be the next horror movie we review.
I thought you were sending a joke text message. I didn't think you were serious, man. I thought you wanted to go to Camp Sugarwater. No, Camp Stonewater. No, Camp Blackfoot. What are the names on this the camp in this movie, man? I don't understand. I'm talking about The Burning. Now, we'll give a little bit of background on The Burning because even though I'm a slasher aficionado, which probably I pronounced wrong, but it means an expert per se in the field, the genre of slasher movies, The Burning is one that had escaped me.
Have you seen The Mutilator?
No.
Have you seen The Prowler?
No.
You're not an aficionado, sir.
Damn it, man. I was, and now you've exposed me. All right, The Prowler is on the list. We're gonna do that this year at some point. So it's on the list. We're gonna.
Granted, if it makes you feel better, I haven't seen either of those either.
Well, what? Come on, man. We're the movie fellas. We're supposed to be horror junkies, but even the biggest horror fans have some blind spots, and The Burning was a blind spot for both of us. So we've jumped into our time machine to go all the way back to 1981, or I guess just turn the Blu-ray on. In your case, because you bought the Blu-ray, apparently.
Yeah. Worst $10 in my life.
Well, don't say that. Come on.
I mean, there's things about this movie that I want to talk about.
Well, let me give some very, very quick background. So, in the 70s, a lot of horror movies back in the day and even today are based on urban legends. Even, of course, the movie Urban Legends. But there was an urban legend about a killer named Cropsy. Not to be confused with the name Dropsy. Cropsy with a C. Who apparently was somebody who kidnapped kids and killed people on Staten Island, New York, back in the 70s. And it was a campfire tale, but actually based on some real things. I would direct everybody to go watch. There's a documentary called Cropsy from 2009. I haven't seen it myself, but apparently goes in a lot more details about what actually happened and all the crazy stuff. But the urban legend caught the attention of a young Harvey Bob Weinstein. Let's address the elephant in the room, the elephant who's currently in prison.
Good.
But this movie written by Harvey Weinstein. Now, this is how the Weinsteins kind of came on the scene. This was their idea. They pitched the idea. He wrote the script. Their mom helped work on the movie too. So it's all a Weinstein production. And certain characters and scenes make me think that it very much was from the mind of Harvey Weinstein. But we'll get to that a little bit later.
Well, I guess
when I think of killers at camp movies, my brain first obviously goes to the most obvious choice, which is the Friday the 13th series. And then I think about the sleepaway camp movies. And then let's see. I think that's really it in terms of horror. And I mean, obviously, I think the 80s made a lot of money off of the idea of killers at camps. But does any other like killer camp things come to mind from you other than those movies?
Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
I don't even.
Well, the clowns were camping.
Oh my goodness! What is this nonsense? I'm sure there's some very obvious killer at camp movie that we're missing here, and we've already basically destroyed our horror credibility.
I think I destroyed that a long time ago.
folks, tell us in the comments what other killer camp movies there are, and if you have any recommendations, let us know in the comments, and maybe we'll check them out. I'll be honest, I'm not the biggest fan of these camp movies. I do love Friday 13th, of course, but just watching people at camp, maybe it's because I never went to camp. You know why?
You
Because I can't swim. So
you uncultured American child,
you went to camp?
unfortunately.
Well, well, I thought. Well, it doesn't sound like you're gonna hype the experience up. So it wasn't a fun summer for you.
No, there was no serial killers trying to kill me, so how can I have fun? Seriously, arts and crafts, building rafts, going in the water anytime I wanted. Got boring after a while.
This sounds like the classic kid experience. Like I don't that got well. Okay, I guess arts and crafts might get boring, but
Well, yeah, and then not to mention I was the weird kid, so it's not like I had any. Not to mention I was 5. So it's not like I had any interest in even doing what these teenagers do in these movies. Maybe if I went as a teenager, I probably would have enjoyed myself. Winky, winky, but that's besides the point.
yeah, 5 is really young for even those activities you named. So I would
I
be
was
think
able,
I would guess that your day was pretty much wake up, go color some coloring books, nap time. I don't know what kind
no,
of activities you can
I
do.
still had some arts and crafts. They still let me go swimming because I was able to swim. Mister Never
So
learned to swim.
so the camp, they were having you use crayons for color books. They were calling that arts and crafts, huh?
Well, here's the other thing. Granted, you never went to camp, so you wouldn't know. But camps, I feel like nowadays it could be me being an old man now, but yeah, things are a lot different. If I was able to physically do it and be safe, they allowed me to do it.
Hmm.
Like they did not. They refused to let me do the archery. That was sad, but they still let me go
I mean,
swim.
I feel like not allowing a 5-year-old to do archery, I feel like that's reasonable. I mean,
They
you probably would have shot someone or shot yourself with.
I yeah, shot myself in the eye, right?
Let's talk about the opening scene, the burning of one caretaker, Cropsy. Now, a caretaker, to my understanding, because you just explained to me before we started, is somebody who would be cleaning the campgrounds, be doing kind of custodial things, maybe doing some maintenance work, mechanical
Mhm.
things. He'd kind of be around and about, so the kids would basically be able to be aware of him and maybe think of him as like an old creepy person. But then, as you mentioned, Todd's going to give us some backstory on creepy caretaker
Cropsy.
Cosbury, Cropsy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Crossberry?
kind of Bill Cosby. I don't know.
Bill Cosby. Okay.
I
This
started
movie
thinking
was
about
a whole new different turn if Bill Cosby was Cropsy.
the word creepy, and it was like creepy Crosby Cropsy. I don't know. Okay, so do you want to elaborate on the
So
legend of Mr. Cropsy?
so yeah, take the legend with a grain of salt, obviously. But from what we understand of what Todd is telling us, Cropsy was an old, mean drunk who it sounds like he was probably abusing the kids if they stepped in his way, gave him dirty looks, and just overall was not the person you want anywhere near your kids. I wonder if Mr. Weinstein had something to do with that.
Well, I'll say this. I mean, even though what's going to happen to him is pretty bad, the fact that he's going to become this murderous rampage killer tells you that probably even before this burning incident, he probably did have a couple of screws loose. Probably was already a horrible human being in general. But even bad people deserve a good night's sleep. Maybe.
Well, fuck a good night's sleep because he gets to wake up to. Where did these kids get a skull?
I don't, the resources these kids have at this summer camp, this Camp Blackfoot, I don't understand.
What is because right now, to our knowledge, we don't know where this camp 100% is. Is this camp like by Camp Crystal? Is it the same lake as Camp Crystal Lake? Is Blackfoot, Camp Crystal Lake, and the other camp in this movie all in the same lake? Is there a town nearby? Is it where they had a cemetery?
Well,
Where did
we've
they get the skull?
we've learned that Camp Crystal Lake is basically like a city in itself with the amount of distance, the amount of things in Camp Crystal Lake. I don't know. I don't know where they got this, but their plan is to scare him into. I guess they would like him to soil himself. Would be the idea.
Well, yeah,
But he has a he
he
has a he
does
has a
soil himself.
he soils himself, but not with his own body fluids. He soils himself with gasoline
If
and makes
fire.
himself explode. Now listen, I does the movie work better if they actually cause the fire? Because they really don't cause the fire. They put it on a safe place where anybody reasonable would wake up and be scared, but your reaction, I don't think, is going to be to knock it off its place onto your bed.
See, me, what I was honestly expecting when I saw this scene, I was expecting like them trying to wake him up, and Cropsy just never wakes up, and the fire kind of gets out of control. That's what I was expecting.
That actually would have been a good way to do it. Maybe it accidentally falls on the bed,
Like
and
maybe
then
Cropsy kind of twitches his foot while sleeping, knocks into the cover, and then the skull falls on him. That's what I thought was going to happen. And
if
then
you
when I
wanna
saw it,
if you wanna make it where the blame is completely on them, that's probably the way to do it. The way they did it is, like, half the blame has to go to Cropsy for knocking it onto his own bed.
well, to be honest with you, I probably would have haymakered the shit out of that skull, but I wouldn't have knocked it down. I would have just, which probably would
Well
have taken out the fire. But
well, let's talk about the idea of when it rains, it pours, 'cause I feel like I'm watching I feel like I'm watching a skit here, because the man gets out of bed, he's already on fire, and then he bumps into a can of gasoline. Like how much more can go wrong for this guy in the scene? I don't understand. Well, again, and then he runs out the cabin. Well, let's say maybe busts through the door, but he's outside the cabin
mhm.
and he's in full fire suit and a pretty clear, visible helmet on.
Right.
So I'm my reaction to this scene is laughing, unfortunately, because and that's not a normal reaction because the man's been set on fire. This is supposed to be tragic. You see the horrifying looks of the kids watching on to see what they've done. But the dude is rolling down the hill, and I'm just chuckling to myself. I'm like, oh my goodness, this dude's having a bad day. Jeez.
Well, 1 week later, we see. I want to talk about this hospital, unless you have something else to say about this opening. I think we kind of clarified everything.
Pretty ridiculous, yeah.
Yeah. Not as ridiculous as this hospital bit that happens 1 week later. What is with this orderly or nurse or whatever this guy is?
I don't. This whole conversation he has while he's walking. I guess the new is it a doctor he's walking with?
A new
He's walking,
doctor.
trying to put the fear of like everything into this guy with this very awkward lecture about, oh, I'm gonna show you something like crazy here. You're not gonna believe this. And this whole scene is just very awkward.
It is because one. I just want to bring up a line. This guy is so burnt, he's cooked.
Oh, Harvey Weinstein.
What kind of line delivery is that for one? What line was that for one? And then he goes on, I think he says he was like an overcooked hamburger or something like that. Like, okay, we get it. The guy has been burnt alive. You don't need to give us all these. Were these supposed to be funny puns? They were more annoying to me.
I don't know what the point of this was. I think you could have just like cut to him in the wheelchair being wheeled out of the hospital, the little montage they were doing. I guess they wanted to show his burnt arm to show how much bad the damage was, but
We kind of figured how bad the damage was just by seeing the event.
yeah. And it's not like he didn't kill the orderly, so it's not like there was a death scene there or anything. So
That we know of. What if? Because that was the one thing I was thinking. Okay, the guy is screaming like crazy. I was thinking, okay, maybe Cropsy can't touch people, otherwise it will burn them.
right.
I was thinking that was probably the case. I mean, we don't know really the fate of this orderly. He probably just quit and left. I got a cat behind me. But it wasn't needed unless that guy is dead because Cropsy is able to burn people alive just by touching him, which we know is not true.
Well, very rarely is a character so annoying in one scene that you actually want him to die by the end of the scene. But this totally checked off the box where I was like, kill him now. Get him
right.
But it is 5 years later then, and Cropsy finally, I'm guessing he's run out of money, so the hospital probably there was some insurance at some point that kept him in the hospital, but
Probably.
5 years of care.
Well, it's also probably the owners of Camp Blackfoot also probably had to pay for it because it happened in a sense on their watch. Because let's face it, if you're an owner of a camp, you're never going to get time to yourself technically because you got to make sure the camp is running smoothly. Having kids play a horrific prank that causes someone to burn alive is going to cause some insurance issues. And you are going to have to pay for that man's medical bills if he is alive.
I guess the way it played out too was kind of like the kids really couldn't be held accountable legally because he knocked the thing over himself, and that's gonna be their story, basically. So I guess because there is some world where you could say maybe, oh, did the kids get in trouble legally for this thing?
They didn't.
But the way it was done, it's like, yeah, there's no way to actually.
Because the other thing is, the kids probably never even actually came out and said, "Hey, we caused this," because there's no cameras there. It's still 1981. There's no CCTV, at least at a camp.
I mean, he did see them in the window, but it's like kind of like his word versus their word in terms of like, were they there?
And we never hear him speak throughout the entirety of the movie. Not even when he's burning alive, we just hear him screaming. So
maybe he can't speak. So
overall, I do want to bring up one more thing about this hospital with him being wheeled out. You hear the overall talks of the doctors and the nurses telling them, one in particular telling them, you need to forgive those kids. I guess he can't talk. You need to forgive the kids. Revenge is not the option. I'm like, if y'all are sitting there having to tell this man, revenge is not a good idea, that means y'all believe he could potentially be a physical threat to people. Y'all should be calling the cops.
I mean, exactly. By that time, 5 years, they know about him a little bit, his personality and stuff. If you have to give a human being that speech, like, hey, don't go kill those kids, like, maybe you should alert the police and like have them follow him, because it's not even like, I mean, my understanding is that literally from leaving the hospital, he goes straight to kill somebody, basically. Like, the man doesn't go to get settled in, doesn't go to take a nice hot shower or whatever. He just goes straight to wanting to kill somebody. So
right, and I think I know what this hooker did to cause his anger, and it's not because she saw his face and she was immediately scared. Even though I want to know how she saw his face when all I saw was a man in a mask and sunglasses.
Well, also just the look, I don't know what the protocol is for hookers who take on clients, but just like a dude in the shadows who's like walking slowly, like that's like, I mean, Jesus, like at least if you can't see his face, like.
Well, there's also the fact that some hookers, especially the ones by themselves, again, to my knowledge, I have no experience in this. I could be 100% wrong, but blame the fact that I used to watch Law and Order SVU all the time.
That's what I'm going by. I'm going by Law and Order and SVU, or Law and Order and CSI, basically.
Yeah, but
and other movies I've seen. So
most hookers that are, in a sense, self-employed, they carry heat for a reason. So the fact that this woman did not have a weapon on her means she is way too trusting for this area.
Somebody you can't see who isn't talking, like that's like a holy cow. Like, now I wish one of the things the movie does is basically because Crosby doesn't talk, you never actually really understand his motivations or what his plan is. We have no idea. At least with like Jason, even though Jason doesn't talk, you kind of get a feel for what Jason's trying to do, what he's trying to accomplish. Did Crosby just randomly, like, yeah, I guess he just wanted to kill somebody immediately. So, but it wasn't like a camp person. It was just like a normal person.
a random hooker. If we found now, if there was a woman at the when he was burned alive, I would have honestly assumed, okay, this is just that girl that was
Mhm.
there during the joke, and she just let herself go really bad.
Well, I thought from the opening that this was gonna be more of a revenge tale. I thought that he held these kids accountable, he blamed them for this whole thing, and now 5 years out, he's gonna come back and kill these kids. I didn't think it was just, like, literally him he's just like a normal he's just like a psychopathic killer who's willing to kill everybody. But it goes more of that where I was expecting more just direct even if you wanna say, like, I wanna kill people at camp because, camp kids were like that, I blame all them. But, yeah, killing random hookers is kinda like
That
he's
that's
just he's more in the mold of just, like, straight psychopath, no real motivation or it's not even revenge at that point, it's just like, I don't know.
at that point we don't even need the camp anymore.
Yeah. Exactly, you could follow him on the streets of New York, and he would just be killing random people there, so
Which makes me wonder, is like, how many people did he kill before he got to the camp?
true. Yeah, what's the time jump there between dead hooker and he arrives at
Camp,
camp? We don't know.
right? It feels like there's probably a movie on its own there.
Well, the problem is when you cut to the camp, like I said, that scene with the hooker is, like, so
Out
feels
of
like such a
place.
different movie. It's the worst scene in the movie because it just feels like, what was the point of this? And also feels like literally the movie would be better if you just took that out. Just have him leave the hospital in the wheelchair and then cut to camp.
Our our camp with our characters. Most are Some are tolerable, most are hated. In my opinion, with
Yeah.
this movie the,
Well,
the writer did not know how to write compelling characters in this.
not only that, but these first 45 minutes, we're not going to get any kills, no death scenes for about 45 minutes. We're doing a whole bunch of setup here with characters, as you mentioned, that's kind of a mixed bag of likable, unlikable, unbearable in some aspects for some of them.
Eddie
S- Eddie and
Glazer,
Frazier, Glazier. I don't know what his name is,
Glazer,
but
Glazer,
and Glazer was, yeah,
and come to
um,
find out, he can't do much glazing.
no, can't do much glazing. And also has, in my opinion, one of the worst accents I've seen in a movie. I feel like it's definitely a fake accent. I don't believe that actor actually sounds like that.
I can't tell you.
Most slashers, especially from the 80s, were very like s- centered on the idea of a killer stalking women.
Hmm.
This does have a little bit of a twist here where it feels like the focus is more on the guys. The women are basically sort of disposed mostly of in the middle of the movie. And then it's really like him, like you have the ending is pretty much like the killer versus two guys. It's very different from most horror movies, I would say.
Yeah,
Not saying
well,
good, not saying good or bad, just different. I'll say at least in that. So it's unique. So
yeah, well, it's kind of hard to have Cropsy go after a woman when the best and no hate towards Karen, the actress that plays Karen or Sally. They're good and all, but you can definitely tell why some of the other girls did not get any kind of screen time or any lines, to be precise, besides Karen, Sally, and Michelle.
yeah, yeah. I mean, obviously with low budget movies, you're typically not paying for like top notch actors. You're basically just trying to find what you can within your budget, new actors. A lot of people's first movies are horror movies, so you're typically in these kind of movies not getting the Al Pacino, Robert De Niro level tour de France or
I don't
tour
even
de force.
I don't even need that kind of level. I just need some form of what I guess commitment's not the right word, but some form of passion in what you're doing. I guess because to be
Yeah,
fair, you can tell when someone is legitimately trying to do a good job.
right.
And to be fair, Sally, I could believe her. I could believe that actress. That's Sally. Something tells
Mhm.
me she was probably Sally in real life anyway. I could believe Karen, the innocent girl, which I don't know about you, but that scene, Karen's death, I was hoping that scene was setting up Karen's death, but then was going to subvert and kill off Eddie first.
You know, maybe the killer was actually in the water
Yeah,
to kill Eddie.
that's what I was hoping.
I
when
thought it
was
was going
watching
down that path
scene.
too. Yeah, again, having never seen it, had no idea like what order people die in or anything. I was thinking that Eddie was clearly going to be the first victim here. Um, but they were saving that for later on. But Karen's death comes about 45, 46, 47 minutes in the movie. And
It is
I,
almost identical to Friday the 13th Part 1.
well, this is where we should talk about. This is a Tom Savini makeup job with this movie,
Oh, I love
which he,
the effects in this movie. I will say that.
yeah, I mean, famously, Tom Savini, when asked about Friday the 13th Part 2, said, "No, that's stupid. There's no Jason. Jason's not alive. There's no Jason. I'm not doing Part 2." Famously said that, and so instead chose to the burning. Did he make the right choice? I don't know. I mean, that's for the audience to decide. But he does in the second half of this movie get to showcase some of his skills for sure.
So I will say, to be completely honest with you here, you told me that the raft scene is a memorable moment in this movie. Not to me. I mean, I could pick this scene apart in my sleep.
Oh, the execution. I think people think of the scene just because of probably because it feels like a massacre because you have like 5 people getting killed, but also because it's it does have a certain amount of gore to it. I like the setup of them seeing the canoe and being like, "Hey, you know, that's our canoe." You have a slow, steady coming onto the canoe. I didn't know if Cropsey was in the water, if he was in the canoe. I don't know if he was gonna like pop up behind them. So I like the sort of the setup for it. When he pops up, it does get kind of confusing what's actually happening on the raft.
Yeah, because when he
So
pops
I'll say
up,
that.
we're assuming he's in the canoe because we don't see a water splash. We don't hear a water splash. We just see him jump up.
Right.
Also, wasn't Cropsey just on land watching someone else before whatever? But yeah.
He can
But
teleport.
anyway,
Let's just give him Jason's teleportation. So
but anyway, yeah. Even though that's the only time he ever uses it. But anyway,
yeah.
but the problem I have with the scene is he starts killing people from the back of the raft and moves his way up because Fish is the
Right.
first one to die, and I'm thinking the only way Fish would be the first one to die and Cropsey not be tackled or beaten to death with a bunch of oars is he jumped at him from behind out of the water because he kills him from back to forward. Fish was first to die. One of the girls gets stabbed and she falls into the water. Was it hell Woodstock? I don't even think we actually see his death. We just see his fingers get cut off.
Yeah, that's true. To kill 5 people on a raft with with shears, one stabbing motion, you would think that there was enough time there for someone to react and to either jump off the raft, like you said, maybe try to fight back. I guess they were all in shock, so nobody fought back.
No one jumped
But
off the raft.
yeah, but they're just all like sitting ducks pretty much at that point. But the fingers thing, even though it does look kind of hokey, it did make me cringe a little bit though. I looked at my hand and I was like, oh, getting your
Nah, I didn't
fingers
cringe
chopped
at all.
off.
I do like how they they did another reference to Friday 13th though. With Eddie's death.
Oh, Kevin Bacon again, almost kind of thing.
Yeah, where he shoves the shears right through the neck, except instead of going from back to forward, we see it go forward to back. But it's pretty much the same thing.
Tom Savini definitely likes that something going through the throat thing because we see this later on with Grazer also. But
I feel like for Tom Savini, that's probably where he cringes is something with the throat. Yeah. And that's why he likes doing it because let's face it, Tom Savini is probably maybe a fun guy to hang out with. Sick and twisted mind, I can guarantee you.
100%. Yeah. I mean, maybe you have to be to come up with these genius sort of death scenes where it's like, oh my God, makes the audience cringe.
But I like
I like the rap scene, but yeah, I don't know. Does it deserve like such a classic status? Maybe not.
No.
It is kind of hokey.
The only other thing is obviously because we want to see some of these characters die in a slasher movie, and you don't start the kills until 49 minutes into the movie. Yeah, you're going to have to do these massacre scenes where I'm thinking this probably could have been better if they had split the kills throughout the movie. Like
Yeah.
have a few kills happen in the camp and have Cropsey hide them, so that way they still go on their little field trip, and then you can start doing more elaborate deaths there. Start doing more of a gory deaths there because now no one's able to come save them as easily.
This rap scene should have been like all like nothing characters. It should have been all like side nothing characters. Eddie should have had his own death scene because
Mm,
he's built up enough to where he should have his own thing basically. And this should have been still done, but used with like more unknown side characters. And then you can have like a 7-person massacre there. But I think Eddie probably deserved to get his comeuppance in a more like elaborate individual death scene way, I would say.
yeah, because as much as I like Glazer's death, because obviously no one likes Glazer, he's, as I just said earlier, he has a more redeemable quality in the fact that he does like this one girl.
Yeah.
Whereas Eddie just wants sex. He doesn't care who he gets it from. He just wants sex. He hates him. Even though, even though they try to play off of he actually liked Karen too. I'm like, don't give us that. We already
Yeah.
saw his interaction with her.
And I was surprised that they didn't so obviously within the story basically they put these people on the raft to go to the main camp basically
Yes.
because all their canoes have gone missing. So I was surprised that the main people, Todd and Michelle, I was surprised one of them didn't go on the raft with them because they're
So
leaving Eddie in charge, but they kind of already established that they don't think that
trust
much
him.
of Eddie. Yeah, so it's like it's kind of a plot thing here where you're just like, okay, realistically, it'd have been like, okay, we have two responsible adults essentially. One of them stays behind with the kids, and one can go.
Well,
Setting those people alone on the raft in mysterious circumstances, that seemed like kind of a plot thing to protect Michelle and Todd from being on the raft. But
well, to be fair, if Michelle or Todd was on the raft, they would not have cared about that canoe. It's like, okay, it's one canoe. What are we going to do with that? We're going straight to camp. So they would have gotten away. What would have made a little bit more sense, because I feel like this next character I mentioned is a little bit more liked by both, and that's Dave. Have Dave on the raft. Have Dave be the one in charge, and because Dave is still a kid, in a sense, he's still a teenager. His brain's not fully developed, so he sees a canoe. He's still going to go for that canoe.
Dave is probably the more fun character. He's always cracking jokes, played by Jason Alexander, who would go on to Seinfeld fame. Yeah, his character basically, I thought, would have more purpose, but at the end, kind of just fades in the background. Like they don't. He doesn't die. He doesn't die or anything, but it's just like
it's like they had nothing for him.
Yeah, he was given enough dialogue, enough screen time for me to think that he'd be more involved. I don't know, but it's interesting. He kind of got off the way the Practical Joker in Part 2 got off of Friday 13th, where you're like, wait a minute, doesn't this dude deserve a death scene too? But then just nothing happens. So
well, at least in Dave's case, he's still a likable character. So
very
he's
much
not like that Practical Joker in Part 2.
Oh god, Ted. I was praying he came back to the camp and Jason got him, but it didn't happen.
For all we know,
okay.
Jason got him in Part 3, and we just never saw it.
So we'll talk about the ending. We had a discussion about, is Cropsey here at this camp specifically targeting Todd? Like he knows that Todd was involved. He's after Todd because Todd was, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Is he there by just random coincidence? Just this happens to be the first camp he stumbled upon, or is he there to get Todd?
So at this point, I'm still going to go through my thing. Is I don't think he's there 100% for Todd, because I don't believe after 5 years, especially in immense pain, skin grafts, and all that, he's even going to remember Todd's face, let alone know what Todd looks like in 5 years' time.
Right. Okay. Now, again, because Cropsy doesn't speak, we don't know anything about his motivations. But the only thing I was thinking while watching it was it's just very highly coincidental that he ends up at the same camp that has one of these kids that actually was involved in his burning. Seemed very coincidental, but to your credit, to your point, even if he was like, I'm going to find the kids that did this, like, how would he go about finding them? It's 5 years later. It's not like the phone book is going to say, oh, he's a camp person at this camp. Like, how would you even go about finding him? So, but the ending does give some evidence to the idea that maybe it was a targeted thing. Maybe he does have a list of the 5 people and he's like, I'm going to find them each one by one. You could have had like a whole series, like 5 sequels where he's just hunting down all the kids. But the ending basically is essentially, and I'll just say also, we can talk about Grazer's death for a second. That was a great death scene in terms of just the visual.
Yeah.
Shears through the throat, held up, basically. Oh,
What you're telling me, this monster, this guy, Cropsy, is so strong he can lift someone up by garden shears, but he's not strong enough to take on weak and scrawny Todd.
well, I was gonna say we already gave him Jason's teleportation. Let's give him Jason's strength now too. But
Well, I guess since we're at the end, we give him Jason's stupidity at the end. I mean,
well, okay. He finds Todd in the woods because Todd is finding the body of Grazer pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
And he attacks Todd with which appears to be a slight cut swipe of the side of his head.
Which
and
there is actually just no cut on his head when you get a close up.
But Todd reacts as if he's like he reacts as if he's like
been hit by the butt end,
like he's passing out. Yeah, I don't know. That's kind of off. But
so for me, Todd, in this last 20 minutes of the movie, Todd is not a great protagonist because he got knocked out with a small cut to the head by shears.
Yep.
Then in the mine, he has a mental break, or there's an editing error because he gets knocked out when he gets thrown through plywood, finds Karen's body, and then has a mental break of seeing Cropsy coming at him with a flamethrower. And then
Karen's body, which is just a freeze frame picture of her death scene from earlier because the actress wasn't available. So,
and then finally he gets back up, and this could just be an editing error or he had a mental break. But the cart that tried to slam into him is now at the very top of the tracks with Cropsy standing up there, just like, "What's up, bud?"
Yeah, I can't explain that. I can't justify that.
And then we get to them finally confronting each other, and Todd obviously now remembering, realizing this is Cropsy. But just because Cropsy has a flamethrower and is trying to burn him alive does not put me to thinking that he knows this is Todd and he wants revenge on Todd per se.
I think it does because he could have killed Todd in the woods, but he has his whole plan to get Todd back to his place, and then he's constantly trying to burn him. Everybody else, he's just taking out with the shears. With Todd, he's like, I'm gonna burn you to show you what it's like to get burned because that's what you did to me. I don't know. That makes me think that there's a lot going on up there with old.
There may be that is. I will give you this. That is evidence of what he's trying to do, of his intention. But I feel like what would have been even better evidence is if, say, after in between the hooker kill and him eventually getting to the camp, is instead of having him at the camp right after the hooker kill, have the reason no one's dying on the camp is because he's going through Staten Island, New York, killing off the kids that did that to him. And we don't see it, but we eventually hear about it that 4 others have been killed in New York.
Okay, right.
And his first interaction with the counselors is at
maybe Todd. Yeah, exactly. Maybe Todd finds some articles, was made aware of the fact that his buddies from back in the day have all been getting killed one by one, and he's the last one alive. But maybe have him find out at the very end, and make him realize that, oh crap, I'm in trouble here.
Yeah, so I feel like that would have been a better setup to what you're saying.
Yeah.
But for all we know, Cropsy just wanted to give something else a try. Because to be fair, I will give you this: Alfred does kind of look like Billy if you have burnt face
Yeah.
and you can't see that well out of your eyes. Alfred probably does look like Billy, and he's the one that set the skull in.
Right.
But yeah, I just it's still hard for me to believe that Cropsy's doing this because he knows that's Todd.
Yeah.
Maybe
If
he
they if they had leaned more into the revenge thing, but you're right. Like with this story, it's just him killing everybody. So it's not like, he's killing people that has nothing to do with his burning. So it's like, but
or I will give you this. Maybe it was half and half. Maybe he was just going to that camp, just kill anyone that's on the turf. Because let's face it, the camp they are currently in, I think it was called Stonehaven. I can't remember. The camp they are currently in, let's face it, that's Blackfoot. Because the ruins they're talking about, Blackfoot didn't have no stone buildings.
mhm,
So they are currently in what was Blackfoot, has been called something else now.
mhm.
So it's probably Cropsy going back to his turf, killing anyone that's there as some form of revenge, and just happened upon Todd. It's like, okay, you caused this to me. I will get my revenge on you because you just happen to be here.
So it's basically a happy coincidence where he went there just to kill random people and then was like, oh, is that? Oh, oh, this is gonna be great. I can kill all these random people, and then I'm also gonna get my revenge on little Todd here. So,
Right.
okay, well, I can buy that. Unfortunately, Cropsy sucks as a final villain because he's completely incompetent here at the end and blows the whole thing.
He literally
And
stands there for like 2 minutes, giving Alfred enough time to stab him in the back of the neck.
he's just in there like, I'm gonna burn you. Any second now, I'm gonna burn you. I'm getting ready to burn you. I'm gonna burn you unless somebody stops me from burning you. I hope nobody's behind me as I'm about to burn you. It's like, dude, get on with it, man. Like,
and and then the worst part is Cropsy's still human. He's not he's not a monster yet. He's still technically human.
looks like a monster to me, buddy.
Looks can be deceiving, sir.
Eh,
But he's
He
still
done
technically human.
that fire
Um,
turned him into that fire turned him into Pumpkinhead. All right, best I can tell.
but the part that annoys me, and also fire wouldn't do that to your face per se. Fire would not make you look like Jason Voorhees without his mask. Just saying.
That's exactly what he looked like here. He looked like Jason Voorhees. I don't even know why Jason looked like Jason, but
Well,
okay.
him was a birth defect.
I get it, but in some of those sequels, his face turned into like a
Even more of a monster. But
think about what he looked like in Jason Takes Manhattan without the mask. What's the explanation for that?
zombified Jason.
And a
Um,
zombie in this room.
but anyway, so still shears to the back of the neck, where it looks like it went through his spine, disconnecting his spine from his brain, should probably kill him.
I got one word for you, buddy. Adrenaline. Adrenaline flowing through his veins gave him the ability for one last push to get his revenge.
Yeah, and that push was getting an axe to the face and then getting burned again.
Hey, I said nothing about successful attempt. I said an attempt.
Now there is one more thing. I got one more thing about this ending, and this is the main reason why I do not care about the ending. Besides the fact that the ending is pretty dull for an ending, and that is the ending kept cutting to Michelle. Like, guys, y'all do know when the characters are safe, we already know what they are planning, and they're safe. It is good reason to believe that they succeeded in what they were planning because they're safe. There's no
You're
reason for us to keep cutting to them.
You're saying you didn't want to see the continued adventures of Michelle going down the river and then
Then coming back up the river with the most soft-spoken camp counselor there I've ever seen.
yeah, you can see where, maybe filling in the screen time at that point. So I understand.
You didn't need that. Honestly, the movie was long enough. Movie would have been long enough without those like 15 or 5 minutes of that kind of screen time.
One thing you could say that's maybe refreshing about the ending, and taking so much to kill Cropsy, is that they definitely weren't like leaving room for a sequel. They were like, nope, he dead. Like there wasn't no some false tease where like you cut back to his body's missing. He was very much dead and burning there. Like a sequel was going to be hard to pull off with that same Cropsy. I
Well,
don't think he's coming back. So
well, did you? So after all the events happened, we then get a camp counselor was telling the story the whole damn movie.
oh god. Well, I mean
So,
that's going to keep happening. It doesn't mean this whole thing didn't happen. It just means
well,
that
that's
it's all added to the legend of Crosby.
so
So
that's fair, but at the same time, does ask the question of was the story actually real? As you just pointed out, it could have easily still been true, or is it just a story we heard from a camp counselor who's trying to scare kids, or is it possible that because the camp counselor still said at the end of that burning, that second time, they still did not find the body.
oh, you're right. They did leave. They did do the thing. Dang. I think my mind lapsed completely. I wasn't even listening to what the guy was saying at the end. You're right. They did still leave the room for the sequel. I don't know. I mean, I guess it's just
Well, obviously, the movie must not have done that good right away because they never got a sequel.
no.
And
I
I'm
mean,
kind of glad they didn't.
at the time it came out, there were so many horror movies coming out, so many slashers. Some of them got kind of lost in the shuffle, and a lot of them didn't get sequels to become franchises. But there's a lot of them from the early mid '80s. A lot of slashers. I choose to believe that if he was telling a story, he wouldn't included those death scenes like the way that they were. He's like, and at that point, he jumped out the canoe and he chopped off the guy's fingers. I doubt he was telling that story. I mean, maybe, but
Well, I think it was because, again, we just cut to him right after everything happened of him telling the story. It's like, and they never found the body. It's like, fuck.
Well, if he's telling the story, he's doing a bad job, and it would explain some of the plot holes, though. But also, if he's telling the story, you think he adds in the part, and then he left the hospital, and on his way to the camp, he stopped and killed a hooker. Like, that doesn't feel like part of the campfire story. I don't know.
It doesn't, but I guess
maybe he was told the story, but then he added in his own part. He was like, "Oh," and then he also killed a hooker. Like, okay.
No, I feel like because looking at this character that was telling that story at the end, I feel like the parts he added were the parts with the naked ladies.
Mm-hmm. Maybe I had to see what the campfire audience was. Was it mostly young kids? Like, who was he talking to? I'd go back and watch that scene.
Be fair, it looked like it was, in a sense, kind of the same setting as when Todd told the story of what he did, even though obviously exaggerated. But that's another thing. Todd, I'm sorry, with the character we kind of get given with this character, I feel like his character should be a little bit more on this kind of story because it is him that caused it. So I feel like he should have some kind of detachment from that story. Like maybe he comes in, hears someone talking about the story, and he cuts it right there. It's like no.
Right.
It feels weird to hear a person who actually caused that event to be the one to tell that story in such a horrific way to try and scare people.
Stand those performance.
Well, I think that in a movie that needed more humor and needed more campiness, I would say Jason Alexander's character Dave was at least looked like he was having fun at the camp. Looks like he was at least enjoying himself and having a fun summer or whatever. So obviously it just happens to be the dude went on to actually have the best career from this. Obviously he's made millions and millions of dollars on Seinfeld and it's been a lot of movies and stuff. But I actually do think he's probably the best here in terms of just establishing a character that kind of stands out a little bit. So I'll go with him, but it wasn't a lot of standout performances here that I can point to. So
no, it wasn't. But I was going to mention you're not going to mention. I think her name was Leah Ayres. I mean, come on, man. She was in your favorite action Jean-Claude Van Damme movie.
Are you talking about Bloodsport?
Yes.
Yeah, but I didn't really like her in Bloodsport. If I remember, if I go back to the review, I think that was like the thing. I was like, "Whoa, you can cut this part out." The reporter, you can cut her out. So,
I mean, that's
uh,
fair, but I do give it to. I agree with you. Dave is honestly the only good character in this movie because I didn't care for any of the others. This movie is bare bones when it comes to characters, and that's really bad considering the fact we get 45 minutes of getting characterization that was very, very lackluster.
Tommy Jarvis Award.
50-50. 50% the kids that played the prank, because obviously they didn't do the prank, this wouldn't have happened. 50% Cropsy, because what the hell was your damn camp cabin like?
it was basically a firehouse. It was like he was going to burn no matter what. It just
I don't
something
even
was
think
going
they
to
needed.
happen.
They did not even need to put that burning skull in there. They just, you know what? Tommy Jarvis Award. I give it to that skull. I give it to Pamela Voorhees.
That skull did a lot of heavy lifting here for sure. I'm gonna go 99% Crosby. he burned himself, and then the lady told him coming out the hospital, "Hey, get this idea of revenge out of your mind." The man leaves the hospital and immediately goes on a killing spree.
Thank you. You actually reminded me. No, it is those damn doctors from that hospital. The minute, if they have to tell him that, if they have to tell him, don't do this, that means you believe he's going to do it.
His first week out the hospital, somebody from the police should have been tracking his movements. Somebody should have been watching him, keeping
Well,
an eye on him.
he would have been arrested immediately after coming out of that whorehouse.
Exactly. If you just had someone, if the hospital was like, "Hey, listen, this guy seems off. Can you just follow him for like the first week?" They would have done it. And you're right. They would have saved the hooker, and then none of this camp stuff would have happened. So I agree. The terrible job this hospital did in producing him and letting him out into the public. Yeah, I agree. Where the hell is the Dr. Loomis here to be like, "Hey, I looked in that boy's eyes and all I saw was evil." Where's Dr. Loomis at? Jeez, we did Dr. Loomis in this movie.
To be fair, Dr. Loomis, no one believed him anyway. So that wouldn't have happened. This movie still would have happened if Dr. Loomis said something.
But yeah, I get it. But just someone to be like, "Hey, watch this guy. Something's up with him."
Needed more focus.
What happened to the other kids, honestly?
I agree, because if this is random, the other kids don't matter. But if he specifically is here to kill Todd, then we need something thrown in about other kids dying, or those other kids dying, or just Todd giving us a summary of what happened to them.
Yeah.
Like, something. Otherwise, that opening scene, you could have had it been just Todd. That would have had more emotional impact if it was just Todd who caused it. He was the one doing the prank, but you had a group of kids, so why not incorporate them back into the story?
Yeah. So I think that's about the only thing I really would have probably preferred. Because another thing, I'll be honest with you, when I first watched this movie, I did not know it was going to have a time jump of 5 years. I just assumed when Crosby attacked the orderly, that 1 week later time, I assumed that's where the movie was actually going to start. But
would it have been realistic that he could have actually recovered from his burn wounds though that quickly though, to where he was like functional? I thought they could have just done a thing where at the beginning the kids saw him catch fire, but then his body was never found. I know that'd be like hard to explain to like anybody. Like, well, what happened to his body? He washed himself off in the river, and then
lived
he pulled a Jason
for
and
5 years.
Well, that'd be a Michael. No, he pulled a Jason and make himself a shack in the woods like Jason did in part 2.
Well, to be fair, he lived in a castle ruin, so
yeah. So if they were doing the thing, if he has to recover from his burn wounds, you had to have a time jump. Did it have to be 5 years? No, but if there wasn't a time jump, then you couldn't have Todd played by the same, or Todd would have to be the same actor from the beginning if there's no time jump. So by doing it 5 years later, you can have an adult basically play Todd now. So
Yeah, but still, it just why why the time jump?
Would you recommend?
It is going to be a soft yes in the form of my first watch of the movie. I was kind of enjoying myself a little bit. Movie's not bad. There's some bad moments. There's some stupid moments, but even some of those stupid moments were, I think, were intentional, played for either laughs or what have you.
mhm.
The real, for me, the only real downside is the ending, and that's why I give it a soft yes, because overall, if the ending's not good, then going the hour and 15 minutes to get to that ending feels like a waste of time.
Mhm.
So I give this movie a soft yes, mainly for the special effects of this movie. The theme, the musical score of the movie is fine for a horror movie. The setups for these kills are actually pretty good for the movie. So yeah, it's just the only thing I didn't care for. Characters, the ending, which the ending is a big part for me. So yeah, I do recommend it.
I basically agree completely. I'm giving it a soft recommend also. I wasn't like impressed. I didn't expect to like see an amazing slash. I was expecting something sort of middle of the road. So I feel like that's what I got. It took too long to get to the death scenes. 45 minutes of setup with characters that really we didn't care about per se. But I did like the score. I like the cinematography. I like the kills when it finally happens. I didn't hate the ending as much as you. I was okay with it. It could have been better. Um, the prostitute scene is a complete screw up. There's no reason for that to be in the movie. Um, but I'm kind of puzzled because this is a 6.3 on IMDb. It has a higher IMDb rating than almost all the Friday 13th movies. And for me, I put this as like kind of a middle of the road Friday 13th movie. It's not like on the level for me as the better ones. And I even think the Sleepaway Camp movies are better too. But I'll give a soft recommend. It's definitely worth watching. Will I watch it again? Probably not. But it has its place. It's a decent slasher, especially in the second half. It's pretty good.
Yeah, so overall, people, you don't have to go home. You do gotta get the Three Ninjas movies and relive your childhood.
Don't watch part 4 though. Don't take any trips to Magic Mountain.
Mega.
No high noons to Mega Magic Mountain. Use that money instead to buy a ticket to Nilbog. Nilbog.
Or, since this is gonna be coming out shortly, uh buy your ticket to see Bad Boys Ride or Die.
Oh yeah. Great
That's a
movie.
recommend right there.
That's a recommend because we'll probably never review it in review form. But if we did, solid recommend. Solid. But
Peace.
still go Nilbog though. Get them nuggets. Get them Nilbog nuggets. Come on.